lifestyle. I'm the new thing with a bright smile. Catch me when I'm out in public, always show them love, and I know they love it. Give you a reason to love me this season. I'm taking my chances, I hope it enhances my...
All right, well, welcome to Romera Records Podcast. Today we have on...
Annalisabeth Craig.
Awesome. How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Glad to see the sun today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Felt like 3 weeks of rain, and I'm not into that. So.
Yeah. So I have you on because I had on Luis, and then I was like, let me just start grabbing folks who do music in the area. So I had you, Victor, and you see the stickers are...
I know. I saw that.
out.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That Sweetwater one, actually, I just had it stowed away somewhere, and then I was like, let me put that up there. And then it fell the other night.
Oh my gosh. I know. Is that felt or carpet?
It's just some carpet I got from Costco.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the room as far as like the like soundproofing it.
Yeah.
And I had these, and then I didn't know if I wanted to grab like a ton of them, because you know some people have like their whole room like that. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, because I thought about decorating the room, but I still don't know. But so I heard somebody say something about using carpet as like a sound deadening, soundproofing system. I was like, oh snap! So I was in Costco and I was like, let me just throw some carpet on the wall.
Yeah, that's it. That's cool. That's perfect.
It's kind of a decent backdrop too.
No, definitely. Especially if you can get some sticker action going on.
Yeah.
I bet you could do something with felt too, because felt sticks to felt. So, like, I'm sure felt sticks to carpet because it's the same texture, you know? Very cool.
Victor said that stickers were a pretty big thing, and I was like, oh, okay. And then Louise came with her sticker, and I was like, I'm behind on the sticker game.
I love stickers.
Really?
Yeah. I have taught like art with kids for a really long time, so my sticker stash is pretty solid. But yeah, having stickers as a branding thing is really good, because like when we have gone on tour and played shows outside of Memphis, you just like leave it somewhere, and you never know who's going to be in a bathroom and just like see a name or see a design that stands out to them.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, I got to check that out. You know, I've done it, so I think it works, honestly. But Victor's really good with that kind of thing as well. I think that every show he's done like koozies and he's done stickers and different kinds of things like that. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's where I got that one from, was his show we went to at I forgot the Young Deli something Avenue.
Avenue. I bartend there, yeah.
Oh, really?
I'm a manager now, yeah.
Okay.
I've worked there for 6 years this month.
Oh, nice.
The deli is really cool. It's a great place, and I've worked in service industry forever, and so and I've worked in Cooper Young, like the neighborhood, since I moved to Midtown.
Okay.
When I was 19, so almost a decade.
Try and keep this yeah, I mean, you can move it. I don't care what. I don't care.
Hey, that's a game changer. Okay, cool. Because I was like, I really just want to sit back in this chair a little bit.
Oh, no, you're fine though.
Rad. Yay.
See, I already messed up mine.
Yeah, I like all your gear, though. You're very set up. Okay, so we just installed, like, a whole new sound system at the deli. What did you think about the sound?
It sounded good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even though, like, so I don't go to concerts and stuff like that much. Like, so I went to Victor's thing, and then I went to y'all's last night, and that's like the first couple things I've ever been to. Yeah. Like I never go to live stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I'm huge on supporting people. So like, that's why I like having you local artists on the podcast, because I'm big about supporting people who I can actually meet. You know what I mean? Like big time, like Grammy winning artists and stuff like that. Yeah. Like the chances of me like actually getting them in a room and talking to them are very slim.
Of course.
But I can get people like you in a room and have a conversation with you, and, you know, and put it out there for people to see. And you're both doing music. Doesn't matter like how many fans you have. You're both doing music. So it's the same business.
Exactly.
So to me, it's irrelevant how many, you know, followers, fans and stuff you have. I have you on, so I want to talk to you.
Oh, yeah. And it's such a Food Network kind of thing. You know, like artists make the work, and then someone makes the stickers, like a designer makes the stickers, and then people do promotion, and all of those things feed into creating, you know, an experience that like people can relate to, because that's so important. Like whenever someone talks to me about music and they're super stoked, my first question is usually like, oh, do you play music too? Because a lot of times people play music and they don't feel confident enough to present themselves and set, because I didn't for a long time, you know, and I've played music since I was 3 years old, and it's just like, it took me a long time, but I get so stoked when that opens up a conversation and someone says, oh yeah, you know, I play guitar and whatever it may be, but I always, even if someone says like, no, I don't play music, like, I always say like, well, that's awesome. We need people to come to shows too. I mean, like literally, if people didn't come to shows, then we would be doing this for nothing, you know? And so that like audience and viewer involvement is such a key component to making work of any kind, music or visual or, you know, just any kind of media. Like it's super important. So I love that. I love that you're supporting people and that you move to a new city and you're just like, let me just meet people.
Yeah.
And like, I think forming a relationship with people, especially in a new context, is so much easier if you have a project, you know? Like if you are saying, we're going to use what we do best and then work on these things together. And then you make connections with that, you know? And it's not based on something frivolous and it's not based on like, I don't know. It's based on something real, you know, that you can take with you and then use that with the next person. I think it's cool. I'm glad you came out last night.
It was a good show.
Yeah. So where you're from, you never went to shows?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Memphis is blessed. And you realize that when you go on the road that like Memphis has so much access to music.
Absolutely.
Constantly. And the arts in general. I mean, there's a lot of incredible stuff happening in the city, but especially with music, like any night of the week, you can go see a band play anywhere, and like that doesn't happen everywhere else.
Yeah.
You know, we're really lucky with that. I'm thankful for it.
And different kinds of music too.
Exactly.
Like when I was talking to Luis about what kind of music she has, and I was listening, I was like, I don't know what to classify your music as.
No, dude, we don't either. It's fine. We've like gone back and forth. When people ask me, I'm like, theatrical pop rock. That's what I say.
That's perfect.
And the other day, Louise used a term and called us orc dorks.
Orc dorks?
Because we were all in band and orchestra when we were growing up, and we kept playing. And that's the thing is like a lot of people, like when you're in high school and stuff, you know, you like pick your hobby, and it's like sports or debate club or, you know, student council or music. And I don't know. I think that's really fun, you know, to just like keep playing. But yeah, the genre thing is funny. For a long time we were like symphonic chamber rock. And we're like, that's not really it. So it changes. So a lot of times someone will say, like, they'll pitch a phrase and they're like, oh yeah, that's it. So we're gonna hold on to that one for like 3 months.
That's pretty cool.
It's very fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I was paying attention to the guy on the bass, and I was like,
Gunter.
Yeah, Gunter. So he was just going in on that, and so I was telling Rachel, my wife, about it, and I was like, so I don't know how this is originated, but I like to make up random stories and tell Rachel this is actually how it originated. But I was like, see the way like how hard he's going and how he's like hitting that. I was like, that's why they invented the phrase like put some slap on it.
Yeah,
like
slap the bass.
Yeah.
Slap the bass.
I was like, I don't know, but it reminded her of some movie. I think it was I Love You, Man.
Yeah. Slapping the bass.
Yeah.
That's why I immediately said that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the movie. She was telling me the
great
phrase
movie.
last night.
You should see it. It's awesome.
Yeah, and
it talks about friendship.
So I was like, yeah, that's where that came from. But I was like, so me being a producer and a student of music, it's so hard for me to just like listen to y'all's music. Like while I'm listening to it, I'm like analyzing it. I'm like, man, what was the drummer thinking when he when he did this, and why did she play her violin like a certain way? That's just how my mind goes like while I'm listening. But it's awesome to do it live because now I'm like, oh, okay, so they must have did that first, and then my mind's just going everywhere.
Oh, yeah. That's cool though.
Yeah, that
doesn't happen with a lot of people.
Oh no, probably
that's like
probably barely.
Yeah, I have a friend who went to music college, and she has said the same thing. Is that it has taken her years to get past the analytical standpoint of watching music because she's breaking it down.
Yeah. And
so on my end with visual art, like I make visual art as well, and that's what I went to school for. And so with visual art, I'm very like process and detail oriented. Like I want to look at the piece of work and understand what materials they used and what they did first and all of those different things. With music, it has been really interesting to see how playing in this band has made me pay attention to things when I'm watching music live in a totally different way.
Yeah.
For instance, have you heard of the band The Faux Killers?
I have not.
Okay. They're rad. I'll send you a link.
Okay.
They played at Bar DKDC last weekend, and I've seen them play a million times. We played shows with them. And for some reason, the guy that was playing the synth and the keys, he was just like right in front of me, and I could watch him in a way that I've never been able to see. And it was so enthralling. And I was just like, oh man, I feel like I'm learning something. And I was watching him just like tune these different moments, and like I've started paying attention to parts, like people, like even when I was watching Marcella last night, like just watching parts. And it's a hard thing to write parts that don't sound cheesy and haven't already been done a million times before. It's especially hard to write parts with an instrument that is different from your own.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to pay attention to how different kinds of instrumentation works with different bands, and how like a guitar and keys will come together to make a part that supports the lead vocalist or whatever it may be. So I'm not quite at your point with like breaking it all down, but I like that you're so analytical. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's what we hope for.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because there is a lot of thought that goes into the process of all of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We had a really cool experience recording a new single this week at Young Avenue Sound, and Louise had written this piece, and originally she just wanted to record it with vocals and keys and a little bit of percussion. Mm-hmm. And she presented it to us at rehearsal, and we all immediately really responded to it and started writing parts for it. And that has never happened, like at all.
Wow.
And that was really rewarding to see growth within our project. Mm-hmm. That we all kind of very instinctually understood who needed to go where and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was really cool.
So you're all just kind of following the flow of like what one person says, like, hey, what about this? And then you just kind of, you feed off of it. It's like an energy.
Mm-hmm. Kind of, yeah. And that's something I've always been so curious about is songwriting. Like, because I can't write lyrics for shit. Like, oh,
really?
Can I cuss?
Oh yeah, you're fine. Yeah.
Like, I can't write lyrics for shit. Like, I've never been easily like inclined towards that. But with Louise specifically, we have usually written either right before we go to the studio or at the studio. Which is cool in its own way, but it takes forever. It is not efficient. It is not time efficient, and it is not financially efficient at all. And I think that's something that Louise is trying to really focus on right now, is just making the most of our time as a band and what we can do. And so we had this rehearsal, and we wrote these parts, and then we went to the studio, and we had our parts ready. And we had to tweak a couple things, but we got it done really fast, and it sounds good, and it was in tune, and I tracked with the horns instead of just tracking by myself. And like that level of growth within a project is really cool, and something that I've never experienced as far as like this timeline goes, where I'm playing with the same group for the most part. You know, like Victor played with us for a while, and we've had some different bassists and some different drummers, but where like, you know, 2.5 years into this, we're really hitting a sweet spot with understanding our process. Because like people that say that they don't make stuff until the inspiration hits are speaking from laziness and a lack of understanding that like the only way that you're going to make work in a consistent way is by like understanding your rituals and what you need to do to get the work done, you know, and make the craft, you know, make the product, instead of just like sitting around waiting for like an idea to come into your brain.
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought something that was crazy that Louise actually brought up was she was saying that she had all these songs written in her phone, and I was like, that's wild, because like, so I make my own beats, and I buy beats.
Yeah,
from
I
people
listened. I listened to a little bit of it.
Oh, you did? Yeah,
it's really good.
So basically, when I have a beat and I decide to make a song, like I start writing to that, and then I record it, and then it's done. Like I'd never like write to a song and then just like stop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like as soon as I start recording, which I do have the advantage of knowing how to produce my own songs.
Of course, that's incredible.
And having my own studio
Right.
here, so I can just like write and
Right.
record whenever I want to. But it would drive me nuts to write to a song and then not record it and then just like have it like in my phone just sitting there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hear people like who do it full time. They do that a lot. Like
Yeah.
they have a ton of songs. Like what's his name? Mac Miller had just
Yeah.
had a new album come out, and I was like, that is insane.
Right.
Because they probably have so many. He might have like 100 songs stored away in somebody's hard drive that they're just going to probably slowly start releasing since he's dead. But I'm like, that's wild.
Dude, that is the sign of like true proficiency in an artist. I think that when Salinger died, the author, do you remember the guy that wrote Catcher in the Rye?
I do not.
Okay. It's
Educate me.
Like an angsty teenage coming of age story that was written. I'm not even gonna say a decade. I want to say the 60s, but I can't remember. But J.D. Salinger, when he died, they found like a vault full of stories, and he had just been sitting on work, you know. And I think that like that's the hardest thing to do. I'm very like, I want to be instantly gratified with the work that I'm creating.
Yeah.
I don't like online shopping for that reason. Like I want to touch a thing and then I want to take it home. And it's like, I'm very bad at, and it's that service industry mindset where I'm just like, what's next? What's next? What's next? You know? And even in my life, I'm very much like, what's next? What's next? It's hard for me to sit in like the present day.
Yeah.
And that is definitely something that I've learned from being friends with and working with Louise is she always has like a back file of lyrics and thoughts, because the song doesn't just exist in one format. It has so many layers, and it takes true time to make something that's worth making, you know, with that. And that's kind of it. So I am a visual artist, and I'm planning an art and music show that is taking place on June the 9th.
Okay.
And I've never planned a project 6 months in advance. And
Okay.
really, like, 2 years in advance. Because, like, I started thinking about this right after I finished my last show. And it has so many layers. Like, there's a zine, and there's a food component, and there's music. So we're writing music, like a soundtrack for the visual art. And there's, like, a woodworking component, because I'm building all of these frames and walls for things. And then there's like the promotion aspect of it, and there's the digital marketing aspect of it. And all of these things take time. Like that is growing me for sure, because I have to think about something like super far in advance and break it all down. And I have a note in my phone that's just full of pictures and titles and phrases and blobs of thought and things like that I'm like, I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it when I have the time to process it and like really think through it, you know? And it's the same thing with making music, you know, and writing songs. And I think it's so important to like track your brain, you know, and like track your thoughts and keep up with like how one thing connects to another. Especially with like making creative work, you know, because it all feeds into each other. I'm a multi-hyphenate. That's a phrase I heard on a podcast the other day,
Multi-hyphenate?
which means that like, you know how people are like jack of all trades and master of none?
Yeah.
I call bullshit on that. I think that like there's a way to do it right. There's a way to, instead of being like really mediocre at a lot of things, instead using a lot of things to create, to feed into each other and to build up the practice of all the different things individually. So that's what I'm kind of trying to work on with all things right now.
So what other, I guess, talents do you try to master or, you know, do well as well as, you know, playing the violin?
So I've been an educator for the last like 4 years, and I have given a lot of energy and effort into being a good teacher and being proficient at explaining how to how to do specific skills. So like drawing and painting specifically.
That's a skill, being able to explain things to people.
You got to know it.
Yeah.
And it keeps you up, and it's good. Everybody should teach. If you know what I mean? People who say that those who can't teach, or whatever, that's also bullshit. Like it keeps you on your craft in such a real way. Mm-hmm. I think there's such a side tangent. There's such a level of laziness with maintaining your craft throughout your life. And I just, I don't know. But so teaching, and I try to maintain a practice of like daily writing. So there is a book called The Artist's Way, and I can't remember the author's name right this moment, but she talks about the benefit of morning pages. So waking up and just like immediately brain dumping what's in your mind to get you clear for the rest of your day, so you can like do what you need to do, basically. So my mornings start at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon most of the time because I bartend so late.
Yeah.
And play music late and that kind of thing. But I try to maintain a practice of that, and I keep a sketchbook and do a lot of collaging. Very into like interior styling and putting work into keeping my surroundings fresh and interesting, so that I like my life and I like my days, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those kinds of things. And I run and I do yoga. Try to stay fit. You know? Yeah.
Something that you had brought up earlier. So I was talking to Jacob Allison. I think that's pronounced his last name. But so I was talking to him, and he was saying that one thing that he started doing when he was starting his podcast was he started just carrying a recorder around, just recording all of his his thoughts and the things that he was saying. And I was like, that's a pretty crazy concept. Like I don't think I would ever do that, but like if more musicians probably did that, like I do. So I'll come up with like beats in my head, and I just have to, later on just record it and then make it. But like that thing will be stuck in my head, and I'm like, if I don't record this,
gotta get it out.
Yeah, I gotta get it out somehow.
Get it out.
So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Liz Gilbert talks about that. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love, but she also wrote this book called Big Magic, and talks a lot about like the thing in your brain, and you chase it, and who is it? Another author talks about that too, and just like trying to get it, because it'll like be there, and it's like this ethereal thing, and you have to get it out. But yeah, like recording your thoughts is so important, and your ideas. That's why I have 5 million notes in my phone, and they're all split up. I have like a a bits and bobs kind of note, and then I have a CBS list, and then I have like a music list, and then things to put in my calendar and like stuff like that. But with with tracking your creative thoughts, I've always kept a sketchbook. Like in college, that was something that was really important. And in high school, I mean, like I've always had a physical place. I'm a very analog human. Like I've always had a physical place to keep my things, you know, and like my memories and my thoughts, and my practices. But there's an artist named Austin Kleon, and he has what he calls his daily log book, and he keeps like his book with him, his notebook with him all the time. And that is the coolest thing on Instagram to me to see, is people who make work and are making money from making work, to show the daily grind of just like what it takes to get to that point, And part of it is like being consistent with tracking your thoughts and all of those things. There's got to be a system to it, you know? Otherwise, it doesn't happen.
See, I saw Wiz Khalifa. It started a long time ago, but I think he actually still does it. Yeah. But he had these videos called day-to-day videos. And so whenever he was like just every like random days in his life, he would just record him doing it. And I was like, that is so... It's such a connection with his fans, because like people are probably always wondering what musicians are doing all day. Yeah. And the funniest video I saw was he was on his tour bus, and he was like texting somebody on his phone or whatever, and he like throws his phone, and then he starts walking away, and his phone falls on the floor, and he was like, oh, and then he walks back and he picks it up and it cracked. He was like, did y'all see that? And then when they play it back, you can you see him throw the phone, and it like slow motion just like comes back off the bed and cracks. And I was like,
no.
Those are the types of things that people probably actually enjoy to see. Like even somebody as big as Wiz Khalifa is,
cracks his phone.
Still cracks his phone.
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so easy to idolize people, you know? And man, we need those like humanity reminders.
Yes.
So hard. Yeah. I've definitely, that's why I listen to podcasts all the time. All the time. That's very much like how I spend a lot of time alone because of the way my work schedule is oriented. And I don't mind that. I love that. I'm like quite extrovertedly introverted, but that is one of my favorite things to do is just type in someone's name. Like if I hear of like an author, an artist, or a musician or something, just like type in someone's name into like the podcast app and then just look at all the episodes that they've done interviews with, you know?
I didn't know it was a thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is absolutely how I find stuff. Like the other day I got on this kick about like Twyla Tharp, I think is her name. She's a dancer, very famous, like ballerina and choreographer. And she has written all these books about creative collaboration and just like maintaining a practice. But her true like thoughts shine in talking about collaborating because dance is such a collaborative effort. But yeah, I like typed her name into the podcast app and then found like 5 interviews with her. And this woman is so old. She's like 95 years old.
Oh my God.
She's not that old, but she's very old. She's in her 70s. But she is still making work and not giving herself excuses. And like,
that's awesome.
That's really cool to me. Yeah. But she's an icon, you know? And then we have this magnificent gift of like social media and, you know, podcasts and YouTube and all of this information just like sitting in our pockets. Yeah. And I'm just like, I want to educate myself and know what these people are doing on a day-to-day basis and what they think about, you know, cereal. And
So what podcasts are you listening to?
Lots. All the time. So, I listen to the one about the multi-hyphenate. It's called Control-Alt-Delete.
Okay.
And it is a podcast with a British woman who coined the term multi-hyphenate and talks to people a lot about, like creative people, about what it looks like to live a life that is different from your peers and that's different from what society says that you should be living, and not even in like a naughty alternative kind of way, like in a you know, my schedule is like 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. a lot of times, you know, and I'm okay with that. And like, how do I make that work for the best of my ability? Learning from other people in that podcast is really awesome. I listen to a podcast called Unstyled with the editor of Refinery 29, and I really like personal style and like the way that people use their things and themselves to tell a story to the world. And that podcast focuses a lot on like what people wore at the biggest moments of their lives and how they chose to present themselves in those ways, because that matters and we think about it. You know, a lot of people think about it, and I like that a whole lot. I've always listened to Art for Your Ear, which is with Daniel Krissa. She runs an incredibly famous blog called The Jealous Curator, and every day for many, many years she's posted work from artists all over the world, well-known and otherwise. And she interviews artists, and that's really cool. So those are the 3 that I'm definitely like listening to a lot right now. Okay. Yeah.
I actually, so probably the number 1 and 2 podcast I listen to is Joe Rogan's podcast, and then it's a podcast called My Favorite Murder. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yes, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, those are probably my 2
True
favorites.
Murderino.
Yeah.
Been listening since the very beginning. That's fun.
Nice.
We can geek out about that. I love that podcast.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting way they they thought to put it. I've never heard of another podcast
yes.
doing it that way.
Comedy and true crime.
So if you've never heard of the podcast, basically what they do is people send in stories, and I think they wanted to start out with like hometown murders, but it ended up turning into just like people were just sending them crazy stories.
Yeah.
And
you're talking about the mini-sodes right now, though. You're not talking about their full form, like 2-hour. That's the Monday episode.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that. I just kind of just listened. Like I noticed there was a difference between like the mini episodes and then the whatever else. They have like the live ones too.
They do.
But I just listened, and I didn't know what the real difference was. But if you're more than welcome to explain, because I don't know.
Oh, I just love them. Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark started this podcast called My Favorite Murder because they bonded at a dinner party over some story of a serial killer, and everybody was really weirded out, and they were really intrigued with each other's knowledge about the serial killer story. And they made a podcast about it. They just like started recording their conversations in like on a couch at one of their houses years ago, and like probably 3 years ago, maybe longer than that. And they took off. They are such an example of like DIY podcasting blowing up because like they're making money.
Yeah.
Like they are wealthy now from this. Their careers are set.
For sure.
And that, I mean, they own a podcast network now. They literally like own a space, like a physical space, like a podcast recording studio. They go on like worldwide tours. They have a fan base that touches everything. And it's because they made like talking about something that literally happens every single day. Your face, you were like, oh.
Yeah, it just kind of like drooped.
Yeah, they made something so terrible, but that happens.
Yeah.
An accessible conversation. But yeah, so the way it's broken down now is they have mini-sodes on Monday, which is what you're talking about, which is the true crime stories. I mean, the hometown murders. And just like random shit that people find in their walls, which I love. And like,
oh man, those are crazy.
They're crazy. Or like people that have been living in the attic for 3 years, you know, which is terrifying because I have an attic and a basement and I hate both of them.
If you go through this, so there's a closet right here.
Yeah.
And if you go in there, there's another door to your right. And it's just like, so I have just like phone. I'll show you after the podcast, but there's just like the insulation right behind here. But you can see up into my attic right there. And like while I'm recording, I'm just like, please don't let there be some gremlin. That's all.
I know, because you know it's there.
Yeah,
you know that gremlin's there.
They're watching me. It's some homeless person that snuck into the house.
Yes, that's always it. And they're like so well intentioned, and they literally don't want to hurt anybody. They just want to eat your food and take a shower when you're gone. And like, all right, dude, like that's not the worst it could be, you know. But yeah, then Thursdays they have like long form 2-hour podcast.
Okay.
But you know, that kind of podcasting, as someone who spends a lot of time alone, is really nice because you feel like you're involved in some kind of social expression.
Yeah.
Because you're listening to people talk and conversate naturally. And that is really cool. I like that kind of podcast. I listened to another podcast called Let It Out with Katie Dalebo, I think that's her name. And it's like about mental health and spiritual wellness and these kinds of things. And that's how she does her podcast. Is just like long form conversations with people, exactly what you're doing, where it's just like it's uncharted and it's natural, you know. And I like that. And that's what they've done with like true crime, which is kudos to them because that's a tough one right there.
It is.
You know?
And I mean, you can tell like some of those stories are just like, it's just like, man, that was deep. And like it's just like the people's family members, and when they're telling these stories, a lot of them are like, they'll be like, and I was talking to my aunt and she was like, did I ever tell you about the time, like yada, yada, yada. And I was like, that's a crazy story to just bring upon somebody.
And we all have those stories that someone has told us, you know, that feel like too big to believe, you know, and you're just like, oh, man, that really happens.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. I like that they draw attention to those kinds of things. But they have really done it, dude. They have like an online fan base and fan community. That's also what blows my mind is these podcasts that like develop Facebook groups and like online message boards, like mini Reddits all over the place about just their podcast. But like that speaks so hard to people need community. Like people need to have connections to people in some way. And I'm not even being a grandma about like, we're stuck in our phones. Like phones are cool. I love my phone. I love access to knowledge, like we've talked about. I also like cat memes, you know, like no, it's not that serious, but like we need to be around people, and we need to know people's thoughts, and we need to like feel like the world is not so big, and podcasts help with that because it's so niche-y and specific if you want it to be. And so, you know, things that where you're like, I never thought anybody else ever thought about that kind of thing. And you're like, oh my God, you're really into like analog collage too. You know, you collect postcards from the 1930s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Freaking, so Joe Rogan, him and Joey Diaz, like they will go on these conversations that I'm just like, y'all could have left that out.
I know.
But, you know, some people are probably glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Like Joey was talking about how he poops in the shower and he would take his turds and throw them in the toilet.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God.
I've never heard of anybody doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, you know, there's probably somebody out there that probably does the same thing.
Exactly. And they're like, oh my God, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Or, honestly, if you're pooping in the shower and you're physically removing your turds afterwards, you're not worried about if you're crazy or not.
Exactly.
Like you have no qualms about whatever the fuck you're doing.
That's
you know?
true. That's
like,
true.
You're okay. No, I love that. I think that's really fun. Have you ever heard of chicken shit bingo?
No.
Okay, so apparently there's a new spot called Hernando's Hideaway, and it's like a venue.
In this area?
Yeah, it's off of Elvis Presley.
Okay.
It's real divey, and it was just rebought. And they have music 7 nights a week, and they have a live band for karaoke, which never happens. So that's really cool. But they have something my friend told me the other day, like called Chicken Shit Bingo, and wherever the chicken shits is like where the bingo.
They got a real chicken doing
They've
this?
got a real chicken doing it.
That's awesome.
What have I been doing with my life?
Oh man.
But there's another I know, man. I know. It took me a full like 5 minutes to be like, you're serious. Okay.
So we got the live ducks and was it the Peabody?
Yeah.
And then we got chickens doing bingo.
He's not really a Memphian. Okay.
That's awesome.
The live ducks. I'm like, I never think about that. Yeah, there's also, so I'm really into just like sexual education and like having honest conversations about relationships and like being in our bodies and stuff that people try to make weird that isn't weird because literally everybody goes through it or experiences these things. And another podcast that I listen to all the time is called the Savage Love Cast. It's with a guy named Dan Savage, who is a columnist for The Stranger in Seattle. And his podcast is full of so much gold.
Nice.
Like so much gold. It is structured as people calling in with questions and conversations about like not just their romantic or, you know, relationships like that, but also like issues with families and how to talk about like, you know, how to come out to your parents and what do you do if your parents don't accept what you say, and how to deal with like, you know, your really racist dad in like a wedding setting, and where to draw boundaries and like all of these different things. But he's very black and white and cut and dried about it. And it is really awesome because like everybody, you know, has something. Some people shit in the shower and like people call in about that kind of thing, you know? And it's just like, okay, literally there is someone out there for everyone. Yes. And someone is into what you're into, whatever it may be. But in the same way, like with interests and hobbies and things like that, someone's into what you're into. And it's worth it to find, you know, community in that way.
It absolutely is. And I think it's something that, you know, as you said, like not a lot of people dive into that. And not a lot of people are open to, hey, we can talk about it. And I even, one time I posted on Facebook, what's something that most people aren't willing to talk about? I was like, let's talk about it. And then people just started posting stuff and I was like, ugh. I was like, this is crazy. You made an outlet.
You created that void, and people are dying to talk about the stuff that they feel like they can't talk about, you know? And I think it's really cool to give an opportunity for there to be answers that we haven't had yet, you know? And that's something that is really awesome about listening to podcasts and just access to media content like that, is that you can get opinions about something that's going on in your life, and it can open your mind in a way that you would have never thought about it, you know? And it's interesting. So I've lived in Midtown I've lived in Memphis since forever. But I've lived in Midtown since I was 19, and I've worked in the same neighborhood since I was 19 for the most part. And I've had the same group of really close.
I'm done with
Why yours?
I'm done with it. Yeah, that's what
Mine's just sitting right here.
Whatever.
And I've had the same group of like really close friends for a long time. And, bartending, like the deli runs on regulars. And so like most of my interactions with people at work for the last 6 years have been with the same 50 people for the most part. And that's really cool and interesting, and an interesting way to view life. But I try to be really conscious of like exposing myself to thoughts and ideas that are different than what I'm surrounded with. And even so, I was raised like very conservative and religious, and I was homeschooled for a long time, and I always craved. And that was fine, and parents do the best that they can with the information that they have, and I'm a big believer in that. But I always
Sorry,
craved.
but that was a really good way to put that. Parents do the best they can with the information they have. I've never heard that before,
They do.
but that's genius.
Most people do. Most people do. It's very rare that someone brings a child into this world and wants to do them harm.
Yeah.
I try to believe that for sure. So I think that growing up and having radically different views on most everything than the family that I was born into has been a challenge, but one that has made me very confident in treating all people with love and kindness and respect, and trying to think that they want to do the best that they can, but I don't know. I just like, I'm thankful for that viewpoint, but that viewpoint came from podcasts and and giving people chances, more than one chance, like shit's hard. Life is hard.
Yeah.
Like we mess up, and you got to give people a chance to try again, and another chance, and then you have to draw a line.
Yeah. I think the beautiful thing about life is being able to find out who you are, and not even just who you are, but like who you can be. You know what I mean? Like you've only got one life. So if you're going to be, Jackson Henderson, if you're going to be that, then do whatever you want within that time frame. Even if you believe in like reincarnation, like you only have one chance to be that being. Like you can't go back and be that same being, because like even if you believe in reincarnation, it's you become something else, and it might have the same conscience or whatever. But I always tell people, like, if you have the chance to do something, just do it, because worst coming to worst, you realize, hey, I didn't want to do that, or I don't like doing that, and then you just move on to something else.
Man,
so just do as
absolutely.
much as you can.
You're allowed to change your mind.
Exactly.
And your life is not charted.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you believe about, like, higher powers in life beyond this physical, tangible life, we have autonomy in our choices and our decision making and our path for life, and I think that is like one of the most powerful things, is like putting the work in to figure out what you actually like and don't like, and not basing that on what people tell you that you should like, depending on what family you were born into, or where you grew up, or the education that you were given. Like, I think that we hold a great personal responsibility as humans to put in the work to figure out who we are and how we can best serve others,
Yeah.
And that takes time, and that takes messing up, and that takes saying, no, not this way, and like trying things again, and trying things a different way. And I quit drinking, like a year and a half ago, and
Nice.
that was huge for me, because it has opened up and expanded my life to so many ways of existing that are so much better than they were before. But I had no idea that it would be like that because I was doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And so learning to try something different with that and practicing what it feels like to be a social person that is also sober and to be a musician that doesn't drink and those kinds of things has not been easy, but it is so much easier now. And it makes everything else so much easier, you know? And it has given me a lot of permission to rethink things in my life that I was very set on being a certain way and thinking that it could only be one way.
Yeah.
And that's how people wake up when they're 45 years old and they hate their whole ass life, you know? And I don't want to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think you have to do that, you know?
Have you ever heard, Gucci Man, the rapper?
Oh, yeah.
So,
dude.
So he,
Yes.
everybody said like before he went to jail, he did whatever drugs,
Yeah,
but they said when he got out, he got clean.
Yeah.
And when he was
He got clean in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were interviewing him, and he was like, I just feel so much more focused. He was like, I've just hit another gear ever since I've been out because I've stopped doing drugs. I got clean. And even Waka Flocka, who was with him, they've had their beef in the past. Like, they were like brothers, and they just had their beef. But Waka went vegan, and then I think he stopped drinking and stuff like that. And they asked him, they were like, why? They were like, why'd you go vegan? Like, that was random. And he was like, I was tired of being tired all the time.
Yeah.
He's like, I was fat and tired. And he was like, I was tired of it.
You get fed up with your own bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, you stop making excuses for yourself.
Yeah.
So true. But there's so much stigma around certain choices, you know? And there doesn't have to be that, but there will be for a very long time.
yeah.
Even something about someone choosing to go vegan. Like, I have several friends that are vegan, and man, people try to just immediately be like, "Oh, you're a PETA person," or "Oh, you think we don't love animals," and it's like, nah, man. People make dietary choices for like tons of different reasons, and like, absolutely, we should respect and love animals and living things, you know, but like, I just don't think that there's any one specific way to do something that's best for you.
Yeah.
And I think that keeps people from making hard choices or lifestyle changes, is thinking that there's only one way to do something. Especially in the context of sobriety and not drinking, but also in the context of, going to college and like, education and career choice, and like, everybody does not need to go to college. Absolutely not. You know, we need to stop telling high school students that everybody needs to go to college.
Very true.
That is a terrible decision. We need some people to go be welders and be plumbers and like
trades.
We need to learn skills. Yeah. I remember I had an English teacher in high school who talked a lot about like the value of work. And that's something that I really like respect in people, is if they have a strong work ethic and they don't rely on, look, like families helping you in financial situations, those kinds of things, having support from, your birth family is like a really powerful thing. But, for people who don't have that and they have to make their own way and they have to figure stuff out, like, in really like rock bottom kind of ways. I'm not saying that's ideal. It's not. But, being able to pull yourself out of that is incredible. But having a strong work ethic in whatever you're doing and taking pride in your work. If your work is like installing drywall in houses and you're being the best drywall installer that could possibly exist, or if literally you're showing up every day and you're doing what you're supposed to do and you're at the end of the day saying that's a job well done, we need to tell like kids and high school students and people that are coming of age that that's okay too, and that you can still have a really valuable life without your work and the way that you pay your bills being the the end all be all of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
That's way too much pressure.
Yeah.
That does not provide room for growth.
Yeah.
No one has a fucking clue what they want to do when they're 18 years old.
Yeah.
So why are we taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars of loans? Anyways.
Yeah. And that's something that I've been a big advocate for, is trying to make sure that people understand that, because so I've talked to younger kids in middle school and high school. I'm just like, make sure you try stuff. Like, don't limit yourself to thinking that you can only do so many things in a lifetime. Just keep trying stuff. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to do something against the status quo, because a lot of people, they'll see everybody going one way and they'll think that's the only way that they can make it too. Like you can find other ways, and you can. I think people are afraid to have hobbies. Like, people are afraid to invest in something that they don't see immediate results from. Like, it's okay to spend time on something that's artsy or crafty, and even if it's not like making you a ton of money, just do it, because you don't know when it's going to pay off.
Yes, absolutely. It's hard to be a beginner at something.
Yeah.
It's very hard. It's hard to have no starting point for how to do something, and I think that that keeps people from having hobbies. But yeah, man, hobbies are cool.
Yeah.
That's a question that I wish people would ask more when they meet someone, instead of like, what do you do? And they're talking about how do you make money? Instead, be like, what are you into right now? You know? Because that question is automatically going to form ease between people, because like, you're not trying to get in my business and understand what I do for a living, you know? What do you do when you're off the clock? Like, what gives you joy, and you don't need to post about it, you know, those kinds of things. That's what makes us human. And I love that. So having played music forever, I don't really remember my life without playing violin, because I literally started playing violin like as a child.
Yeah. I was about to ask, when did you start?
Yeah. When I was 3, and the violin program that I did is called Suzuki, and it you're supposed to start when you're very young. It's like children learning other languages. Like, reading music is a language, in of itself. It's a knowledge of comprehension that you have to train your mind to understand. And so I did that forever and played classical music forever. And the Suzuki method trains all musicians. It's violin and cello and piano and, several different instruments, to play the same way. And there is a lot of power in that, because you learn it right, and you learn the technique and the basics that you need to know, and you build a really strong repertoire of music. On the flip side, it does not teach you to improvise. It does not teach you to play with instruments other than your own. And it has been really cool to see that expand and to be still playing music, because I definitely didn't necessarily think that I would be at this point in my life. But the power of music for me is that I don't put any pressure on it anymore to provide like a financial foundation for my life. And I don't ask that of playing music. What I ask of playing music is to provide joy and community and inspiration to do other things as well. But in planning this art show this summer, I am orchestrating and creating music in a way that I've never done before. And part of that is that I'm creating that outlet so that I can learn to play other instruments more proficiently. And being a beginner at playing an instrument when you've played music your whole life is really, really annoying, because it doesn't sound good. And I want to just know, but I'm trying to take the pressure off of that too, and just be like, it can just be sounds, it doesn't have to be like this beautiful, shiny, finished product. And I think that goes for a lot of stuff too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing I have to get on to my wife, Rachel, about, is like, it's okay to like start something and then like get frustrated, but don't think that the frustration means you should stop. That means it's time for you to press through, and it's time for you to like, all right, now we got to focus. We have to get down to it. We were actually watching you ever heard of Skillshare? It's a website. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we were watching a Skillshare, and there's a guy named Mark or Mike something, but he had his entire YouTube channel is him learning skills. He picks a random skill and tries to learn it, and then he just documents him learning it. Like he learned how to do a muscle up in like 82 days.
What is a muscle up?
So a muscle up is like it's like when you do a pull up on a bar, and then you lift over the bar and like push all the way up.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So he learned how to do that in like 82 days. He learned how to do a kickflip on a skateboard in like 5 hours.
That's hard. Skateboarding is hard.
When he had said that, I was like, whoa.
That's cool. 5 hours.
Yeah, 5 hours.
That's impressive.
And he did some other stuff, but it's really neat for somebody to just, he's just a guy, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like he's no world-class athlete or famous musician or anything. Like he's just a guy who was like, I want to learn how to do stuff and then document it. So that's all he does. His entire YouTube channel. He's got like, I think like 1 million followers or something like that. But it's something that people should do more often. It's just try a skill and take your time with it. And if you want to, document it. And so you can see your frustration, see your failure. And a lot of people probably look back and laugh at it. You're like, man, I got mad over that.
And you see how mad you get about stuff that over time literally doesn't bother you anymore.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing. Couple things. Documenting yourself learning a new skill is very important. Even if you don't watch it for another year, like it will matter to you. At least it matters to me. With quitting drinking, I did that every month. I recorded like 5 or 6 minutes of me talking about what was hard, what was easy, what felt better, where I felt better, coping mechanisms, practical, tangible, physical things to take my mind out of a place that it doesn't need to be, those kinds of things. And that has been really, really cool to look back and be like, okay, so a year ago, that's where my mind was. And now I like literally don't even think about that anymore. Like, I just don't care, like it's cool. And it didn't just happen. It took time, and it took saying, all right, I'm going to start here. You got to start somewhere, you know? Yeah. And then within like the visual art community, there's a lot of conversation about the fear of starting and the fear of being a beginner, but also just this concept of the blank piece of paper. Or the blank canvas, and how that is so terrifying. But something that a lot of artists talk about is how one of the first things they do if they're going to make a new piece of work in whatever medium it is to mess it up a little bit and to put some grit on it, And with like that wood panel, if you're painting or you're collaging, put a flat color down, or take your pencil and make 1 million scrubby marks. You're probably going to cover it up anyways, but at least it doesn't look like a zero, like you're going from nothing, and you have put some skill that you have into it that makes it accessible for your mind to start working.
Yeah.
And with any skill, I mean, it's like with cooking, like that kind of thing. People that say that they can't do something, I have said 1 million times that I can't do something or I don't know how to do something. But then a lot of times, if you'll just start somewhere and you'll be shitty at it for a second, like it'll be better. Have you ever listened to the podcast This American Life?
This American. It sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
Okay. It's good. It's a very long-standing podcast. And the host is a guy named Ira Glass. And he has a conversation about being a beginner. I'll send you the exact quote. But he talks about the shitty first drafts and just accepting that, like, there's literally no way that you're going to be good at something immediately. You have to put the time in. And that is something that with teaching becomes really apparent too. On a couple different levels. So my primary role over the last couple of years has been as an elementary art educator in a community setting. So working with kids from all over Memphis in all different school settings, coming to a central location at MCA, which is like the art college in Overton Park that just closed, and taking classes in a non-traditional education setting, which has been really cool. But really little kids do not care if you understand what they think about something, what is in their mind.
That's funny.
If it's a 3-headed monster eating a peanut butter and jelly and banana sandwich on the beach, that's exactly what they're what they're going to draw.
Yeah.
And it's going to make sense to them. And that's okay. You know, there's a lot of power in that. But with teaching violin, which I did privately for a few years right after high school, like, people do not sound good playing violin for a long time. It's real squeaky and bad and, like, isn't good. But the ones that stick with it, like, it's really powerful as a teacher to witness that growth. And it is a really strong reminder that, like, you can get better at something, you know, that is hard. Playing violin is hard, you know, and it's that you can get better at it. You just have to keep doing it and make the squeaks, and, you know, your bow's going to fall off your violin.
I think I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say, what was it? Oh, no, he's like, nothing on this earth is hard. You just haven't spent enough time doing it yet. And I was like, that takes
crazy excuses just right out of the scenario.
Yeah.
If Neil deGrasse Tyson says it, it's like, well, you're right. Yeah, like, obviously, you're right.
It's a great concept because, I mean, if you think about anybody who's great at something, like a sports athletes or NBA players, NFL, like, the reason why they're so good is probably because they spent a lot of time doing what they're doing. And any musician, or if you're a scientist, whatever you do, like, you probably put in a lot of time. That's why you're good at stuff. Most people usually don't day one something and become a professional.
Yeah, I think that the idea of, like, natural talent is such a cop-out.
Yeah.
In the same way that I think that waiting on inspiration is a cop-out, I think that natural talent is a cop-out. Like, when that was something I heard over and over again with teaching, is just like, oh, I can't draw. Oh, I'm not an artist. Oh, I'm not artsy. Yeah, sure, because, like, you haven't tried. You know? I do like you talking about, like, art. It's so interesting because, like, you talking about athletes, and just, like, your references for people that stand out in your mind that you associate with this concept are different from mine, and I enjoy that a whole lot. I like how, like, umbrella, like, broad focus this concept of being a beginner is, because it really is true. It goes beyond, like, my mind immediately goes to, like, creative practices and you know, music practices and things like that. But it's so true, like, with athletes, with politicians, with people in academia, you know, all of those people put in the same. The people that are really good at something, fuck being really good at something, like, the people that maintain and are consistent in something that they care about and that they prioritize in their life, that it all comes from the same place of, you know, assessing your skills and what you need to know and then doing something with it, you know. And that's something that I've been really struck with over the last, like, couple of weeks, is just taking things that are working in one area of your life and applying them to other areas of your life in a very practical, like, 3-step situation. Like, if something is challenging in a mental health way, what are physical, tangible things that you can do to move your body, to clean an area, to take a walk, to get your, you know, body moving so that your mind doesn't have time or space to think about the thing it was thinking about. And usually that works, you know, and just, like, applying those different, like, tactile methods to lots of different things and not just one thing, you know?
So what's your best way of learning? Like, how do you're like, this is my method of learning. If I'm going to learn a new skill, this is how I'm going to attack it.
Great question. Definitely educating myself. I, like, on YouTube, watching a YouTube video, or listening to a podcast about something. I do a lot of writing, and I keep whiteboards, like, little mini whiteboards in, like, different areas of my room. So that if I'm, like, listening to something, or if I have a thought, kind of what we talked about with that whole, like, getting things down, and so I can write it down and, like, come back to it later, and I don't have to be on my phone. But trying to find some kind of consistency in it. So with doing yoga, we'll talk about that. So that's a non-creative version of this. Started doing yoga in college at University of Memphis, and had a great experience with it for the most part. And understood the basics of it.
Yeah.
But then I was really like, I don't like social exercising. That just like feels pretty ick to me.
Talking about like with other people?
In classes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Don't like that. I spend a lot of time with people, so I like to do those kinds of things kind of solo. But then I wanted to bring a practice, like a yoga practice, home. And so I found this YouTube channel called Yoga with Adrienne. And
oh my God, I know what
you're She's great.
She is.
She has all of these 30-day practices where you start, it's like at the end of this, you're going to do a headstand for 3 minutes. At the beginning, you absolutely will not. But over the period of 30 days, we're going to gradually build into you being able to do this crazy feat of physical force, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so accessible, but that kind of consistency and having something already planned is great. Or you talked about Skillshare. There's lots of different platforms like that. Yeah. Creative Life, Chase Jarvis, he has a great podcast too. And then Creative Bug. So doing classes, I learn really well in like a class format, you know, in like having a syllabus and a list of objectives and meeting those objectives. And so if I apply that to other things, it's a little bit easier, you know? So yeah, that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big visual person, and then also
definitely a visual person too. Please show me. Do not talk to me. Yeah, show me.
And I'm big on just being hands-on. So like if you want me to learn something, not only do you need to show it to me, but I want to do it. Like I want to mess up on it. I want to be able to get my hands on it and be like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense why this doesn't work because I have to do this. So, like, my job, I do a lot of electrical work and then also just working with, like, computers and stuff like that. So, when I'm looking at stuff, I'm just like, okay, this might be this way, this might be that way. It's a lot of theoretical types things, but I love the mechanical aspect of it because I like to just be hands-on and to change things. And a lot of times I'll ask people questions that they don't even really, they never thought of answering.
Yeah, that's why you're good at this podcast.
Because they're like, well, that's not even a scenario. I'm just like, it hasn't become a scenario, but it could be a scenario. So I love theoretical thinking. It could be stuff that might never happen, but even if it did or if it didn't, I think the brain needs to be stimulated that way. I think we need to think about things that even if it might not ever happen, have the thought. And I mean, that's how most creative writers probably do. Like freaking J.K. Rowling, you created Harry Potter and people have made that like their lifestyle. And that's something that if she never had the thought of Harry Potter, who knows if that would have ever happened. And that like somebody else creating a Harry Potter, something like Harry Potter.
Did that when she was like 45 years old or something like that.
Really?
I don't know if it was 45. She was,
but just older though. That's crazy.
She was not in her 20s.
Yeah,
or 30s, like when she had this whole thing happen.
Yeah. And you don't think of an older person having thoughts like that. I mean, even like Stan Lee. I don't know when he started with his comics, but the fact that he is contributing in the way that he did, it's miraculous. Because when people think of somebody being childish, and what does that really mean? At what point is somebody not allowed to have certain thoughts because it's childish, quote unquote? Like me and Rachel, our favorite, one of our favorite shows, or two of our favorite shows, is Adventure Time and Regular Show.
Yeah.
And that might be childish to some people, but those are amazing shows as far as like their creativity and their dialogue. And it's just like, that's something great to watch.
Oh, yeah. I think that we should run towards the moments in our life that make us feel like a kid.
Yeah.
That's something with quitting drinking that is like talked about a lot, is figuring out what to do with your free time. Because like when you stop drinking and it was a problem for you, then all of a sudden you have so much free time that you literally haven't experienced in a really long time. And so it's like, what do you do with all this like space in your life and the ability to, have a lot of fun in your days? And that's something that's talked about a lot, is getting back to, what did you like to do as a kid? And I think that's really awesome because, like, being homeschooled, I spent tons of time by myself when I was growing up, and like for years. And I heavily invested in hobbies and wonder and play. I think that like creative play as an adult is something that will save your mind and your life, you know, giving yourself permission to just tinker with things, to put some supplies out and see what happens. And I think that happens a lot of times. Like we talked about starting the process of just like getting going.
Yeah.
And I find when I have a lot of things that I want to do, that if I just do one thing that I know I can finish, then a lot of times that'll give me the momentum to immediately start working on something. And maybe I can finish, but at least I will have accomplished something, which gives my ego a pat on the back. And then I can start working on something that's a little bit harder. With music, the way that I was trained to practice my violin was to start with long tones, which is literally just pulling a long note on a string, open string, no fingers, nothing. All you're doing is connecting with your body and the instrument and your mind and like centering between those things. And then playing scales. And then playing those in succession in a certain order, your majors and your minor scales. And then playing arpeggios, which is like breaking the scales into thirds. And then after you have warmed up, you know, and gotten your mind moving and your fingers moving and you're listening to intonation and all these different things, then moving into doing work on, you know, your piece that you're working on. Or in my case, what I do most of the time now is it's like, what music projects am I working on? So it's like, I'll practice different stuff with Louise, and then I'll practice stuff that I'm doing on my own personal work. And then if I'm doing studio work for somebody else, then I'll practice on that. Or if I'm playing a wedding, then I'll practice those things. That I always give myself like a comfort zone for 10 minutes at least. You know, I don't try to practice like for massive amounts of time anymore, but, you know, I'll give myself 10 minutes to warm up and get into my zone, whatever zone I'm trying to be in. And then I'm able to focus. And I think that like focus and attention span is something that we have royally messed up. And I'm really thankful for the practice of music and the background of music, because it has taught me a lot about like being able to stay concentrated on something. But I'm not good at it all the time. I'm really bad at it with lots of other things. But yeah, I think it's important to give yourself, you know, somewhere to start, you know, and maybe that starting place being the same thing every single time. I think that's why people are so stuck on this idea of like morning routines, you know, and doing the same thing when you wake up so that you just go in autopilot and then you're able to make your hard decisions later. Have you heard of this concept of decision fatigue?
I have not.
Okay. So I'm a Libra. I don't know how you feel about any of that stuff. I don't really know how I feel about it, but it's a nice filter through which to see yourself, you know? But decision making is really hard for me because I am a gray area person and I'm able to see the good things in lots of different things. And so it's hard for me to make like a concrete decision about what I'm doing with something. And therefore I kind of like, and I'm in a lot of leadership positions in my life and like have been for a long time, and I have to make a lot of decisions about things that have to do with other people. So like when I have to make decisions about myself, I kind of get exhausted from it sometimes. I don't want to do it. And so I ostrich effect and like put my head in the sand and just like don't think about any of it. But that's something that people talk about with decision fatigue is like if you have a routine for what you do when you wake up and when you go to bed, or at some point, you know, within those time frames, your mind doesn't have to work as hard about, you know, what you're going to do. But okay, so being in the military, is that something that you kind of experienced with like rituals and routines and like having order and like the same way of doing something? Do you feel like that trained you to be able to do things in the rest of your life?
It definitely helped me expedite making decisions because in the military, like you have to make so many quick decisions and there's no time to think. Like, there's no time to wonder what the best decision is. You just make a decision. Doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. Just make a decision.
That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of using the word wonder. So when I was in basic training, we had like element leaders, and I was one of them. And I was
What is an element leader?
So basically, they had like when you're marching, you have four people, and we were marching in columns of four. So you had one row, columns, and then rows. So we would have four people in front of each column. Well, I was one of those people that was in the front, and we were pretty much like in charge of our whole dorm area. And so as the four element leaders were in our MTI's office, and we wanted to ask him something. I don't remember what it was, but I was talking to him, and I was like, sir, we were wondering if, he was like, don't wonder, just ask. And I was like, I never thought about that.
Being direct is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And ever since then, every time I ask somebody a question, I always think about that. I'm like, don't wonder about the question. Just ask the question. And that's something that really helps you out in being a more confident person and being a more direct person.
There's a lot of goodness in what you just said. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, because I struggle with that. Like, I truly believe in being nice to people at all costs for the most part. Like, I really struggle with being direct when I need to be. Not in bartending. Like, with bartending, I'm like, get out of my face. Like, you did not just say that. I gave you excellent service for 3 hours and you tipped 8%. That's unacceptable. You're not welcome back. I mean, not to those extents, but like with that, because it is like my job and my financial well-being, it's really easy for me to say how I feel, especially if like gross dudes are messing with me or something like that. I'm like, absolutely not. You're leaving. Goodbye. You know, that's really easy for me to be direct.
Yeah.
But with other aspects of my life, with making decisions and with asking questions, asking for what I actually need instead of asking it in like an indirect, wishy-washy kind of way. I think a lot of that comes from being a woman who's raised in the South with a very traditional family life and the expectation of being, you know, a certain way. Those things are kind of hard to lose that are deeply ingrained.
Yeah, it's a mindset. It's a culture.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm working on it. Definitely. I have some really strong women in my life that definitely provide like an example of that. And I know that the leadership positions that I aspire to and the projects that I want to manifest are only going to happen if I do active work on like making my decision making better, you know, and understanding how that works and speaking my mind and saying what I need. You know, those things are hard. That takes a lot of practice. And what you said is really interesting.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. It's like something I saw on the internet the other day, and they said, stop saying just. I was just wondering, you know, or I just thought, you know, you thought. Like, ask the question.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that's good.
Who are some people that you look up to?
I think it goes in phases of what I'm doing in my life, you know? Right now, I really look up to Laura Jean Hawking, who directed our music video that we just released.
Yeah.
She was really powerful to work with, and there were a lot of instances in which she was very bold in saying that we had to be on time and that we were going to keep a tight ship and that, no, we're only using these colors in this and that kind of thing.
Okay.
I learned a lot from her direction style. And I feel like a lot of the people that I've interacted with over the last few years are acquaintances and peers in the sense that we do a lot of the same things and that we're in the same age range. But I think that multi-generational influences are really important and friendships in those ways. So she's really powerful. There's a woman named Marley Grace, and never met her, but she is like my soul icon, I would say.
Who is she?
She is a dancer and a writer and a creative, sober queer woman, and she lives in Michigan now. She is from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and she created an artist residency and storefront space called Have Company that I found on the internet when I was I don't know, 20. And my appreciation for and admiration of her has grown in layers throughout my life because, like, I wasn't sober and she has been sober for a really long time, so I didn't appreciate that. But then when I got sober, I was just like, wow, you do all these cool things, and this is why. And I never paid attention to that. But she has done a lot of things in life that I hope to do.
Yeah.
As far as, like, one of my biggest goals is to one day own a collaborative warehouse space that provides a place for musicians to practice, and of all ages, like high school up, and like a library, and kind of what Concourse is doing, like Crosstown Concourse, with having printers and materials and digital tools that you probably can't afford, giving access to those things based on a subscription kind of thing. And so she's done that with different things in her life, but I really admire her, and I constantly try to pay attention to what she's talking about. So that's like a real life person and an internet person.
Okay. Have you contacted either one of them?
Well, Laura Jean is in my real life, so yeah, I hugged her last night. It was great. I was like, thank you for making this video.
Oh yeah, well,
it's really beautiful.
My bad. Other than her,
No,
I'm sorry, the other one.
I've not contacted Marley Grace. I would love to. That's honestly on my list of things this year that I want to prioritize, is like going and taking workshops and classes with some of these people that I like feel like I know on the internet, because like I can buy a plane ticket and go and just like take their class and then meet them in real life, and then maybe build a connection on that, you know? So that's big brain thinking.
Yeah.
So no, I haven't.
That's something I've definitely been interested in doing, is just meeting somebody that I don't know, and then like building some sort of actual real relationship with them.
You mean like a famous-ish person?
Yeah, like somebody who I admire,
Someone that you admire, right? That's a better way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my good friends, DeAndre, I met him through school in like Full Sail University, and then
Where's that?
It's actually, they have a physical school in, is it Jacksonville?
Florida?
Or I think it's Orlando. Yeah. I think it's in Orlando.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have a physical school, but they do a lot of online stuff. But it's for creators, pretty much, like music, videography, whatever. So
That's cool.
yeah, it's literally based on that. So if you go to
Full Sail?
Yeah, Full Sail University, like I think pretty much most of their bachelor programs are 29 months, and it's like 29 months straight. So all you're doing
Yeah, we don't need that
is
summer break.
yeah.
Nobody needs a summer break.
It's just straight into like music. Like I already had a bachelor's in business management when I started Full Sail.
Yeah.
So they took out, I want to say 5 courses from my program, but it was straight music, like the whole thing. And I was like,
just like creating.
yeah. And I was like,
All the
why
producing
isn't
stuff?
all college like that?
Literally cut the bullshit. I do not need to take a physical geography class.
Yeah. I think they just do that just to hold you there for longer. Because if you really...
They do.
If you broke down college, it could definitely be condensed. And Full Sail is the epitome of that. It's just, the entire time, you're doing straight your major. That's it. And 29 months, you're done. And I'm like, man, all schools. And also... Full Sail has these, what are they called? Launch. They're called a launch kit. And in the launch kit, you get like gear. So I got 2 of these microphones in my launch kit. I got that, my audio interface. I got that in the launch kit, and I don't remember what else. But I got a bunch of stuff. Oh, I got a MacBook and some other stuff. Now, the military paid for my school, but all that stuff, you can include it into your tuition. And so they just add it to your tuition, and then they just give you all this gear. And I'm just like, that's what school should be about.
That's so cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you get the tools at the beginning of the program?
You have to finish like a certain amount of courses because they don't want you signing up for like 1 month and then
like, I got a MacBook.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So you have to
Doesn't make a lot of
complete
sense.
like a certain amount of courses. And then once you get to that point, then they send you all your stuff.
So love that. That's really cool. I'm definitely going to look at that. What are the other programs that they offer?
I know they have videography. They have, I don't know if they have
Is
photography.
graphic design one of them?
Yes, they have.
That's sick.
I actually had to do, so I did audio production.
Yeah.
And I actually had to make sounds for video games.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they give you a ton of software that you have to download. And so one of the softwares is like you had to download a game, and the game has no sound in it. And then all you have to do, you have to like create your sounds. It's another software that you create sounds in, and then you pretty much just like import the sounds into the game, and then you have to just like listen. You have to play the game and like listen to the sounds and figure out like, oh shoot, I need to add more reverb to that water droplet so it sounds more realistic.
Cool.
And I've got to like, we had to make our own sounds too.
Yeah.
We had to make like foot
Yes.
like hitting wood.
Yes.
So I literally, they gave us a Zoom too, like the Zoom recorders. Have you ever seen those?
No.
So it's like a
Like a GoPro?
no, it's probably about yay big, and then it's got like 2 mics crossing like this.
Okay.
And most people use it like when they're like interviewing somebody.
Yeah.
So they gave us one of those in the launch kit, but I literally had to take one of those and like take a shoe and like hit it against my floor to like create the sound of walking. And then I had to input it into the video game. And all this is just, I have to do this for my class. And most people are
That's so
doing this.
cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're on deadlines and like.
Yeah.
How much does it cost?
I
know
don't
the
remember.
military paid for it, but
I want to say it was like 50 grand, including like the launch kit. So all the stuff that you got.
oh yeah,
Oh, I also got speakers. As I said, I got that Zoom recorder. And I mean, it was like the stuff, I'm not sure how much it was all worth, the equipment.
dude. But honestly, that takes the question of choice out of having to buy the equipment.
Yeah,
you don't have to
exactly.
do research. They're just sending you like what you need.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And like, think of how many, so everybody's not rich. So you get to college and
Everybody is not rich. Yes, for
so
sure.
everybody gets to college, and there's probably, I want to say, well, when I went to school, like, so
Yeah, where'd you get your bachelor's?
Jacksonville State University. It's
You're
in
from-
Alabama.
Oh, is it Alabama? Okay,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. We just
So we actually played Jacksonville College, Jacksonville University. That's in Florida.
yeah, I was gonna say we went to Jacksonville on tour this summer.
Really?
And
Okay.
It was so random but really cool, and so yeah, it was just that was
Yeah,
interesting.
but so yeah, most students, I would say, don't have a laptop when they go to college.
No,
How
you're right.
hard would it be to just add, I don't know, $600 to their tuition and just give them a laptop?
Take the option of choice out of it.
Exactly.
You need to have a laptop. And if you're 18 years old and you get a chunk of money, you're probably not going to buy a laptop with that money.
Exactly.
You're probably going to go party. So they need to just make sure that you get that laptop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
And another thing, Full Sail gave us, so I told you they gave us a lot of software. They gave us Pro Tools and let's see, they gave us Pro Tools. We had Logic Pro. Gosh, what else did we have? It was a massive amount of software. Oh, have you heard of Sibelius or Sibelius or whatever they call it? We had that.
Sibelius?
And
That's it, right?
yeah, and Musician. That's another Apple software. But they gave us all this stuff, and I'm just like, all schools should be giving you laptops and giving you this software to either create or do whatever you need to do to progress as whatever career that you're trying to go into.
Well, yeah. And that's why so many students, especially at commuter schools like University of Memphis or schools that draw from that public universities, that's why so many students, the retention rate isn't great, is because they aren't set up to be able to do work in a place that isn't on campus.
Yeah.
Most students at public universities and community schools have jobs. A lot of them have families and responsibilities. And you have to be set up for success and have the tools that you need to be able to do something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to make something happen. I mean, that's really cool. That's really, really cool. I'm very glad to know about that. Those kinds of options and outlets are not talked about enough.
Yeah.
It goes back to the whole one way of doing something kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know? But I like that. They're setting you up for success. You have everything you need.
Exactly.
I think that's really neat. I like the video game thing a lot.
Yeah.
So I had the true pleasure of working with some friends of mine in creating a violin piece for a short film that they made.
Nice.
That was the most rewarding creative process that I've ever experienced. It was very DIY. Never done anything like that. My friends that were making the movie have never done anything like that. And we did it kind of backwards, but in the end it worked. Mm-hmm. So what we did was my buddy Josh, this is Studio 143 is the name of the group. And my buddy Josh wrote a script. I have never read a movie script in my whole life. So that's its own language.
Yeah.
He wrote a script and there was no filming done yet. There were no visuals associated with the words. It was truly just the words, which is where this came from. He gave me a vibe. He explained the story, and then I read the script again because I literally didn't understand what was going on the first part because I didn't know how to read the script.
Yeah.
And so then myself and Josh and then my buddy Calvin, who records all our stuff at Young Omni Sound, we sat around and Josh read the script out loud, at the pace that the actors were going to be speaking. And then I wrote something based on the pacing and the timing of how he was talking that wound up working with all of the visuals of what it was later, you know? And it was really cool. I think that those kinds of responsive, creative exercises where you're using another sense to respond to, you know what I mean? If you're making something in response to what you're seeing, or you're making sounds, in response to what you're seeing, or to create a certain vibe, that kind of thing is really interesting to me, especially if you're smacking your shoes together. I'm just that is the DIY content that I am looking for, you know?
Actually, I just remembered that I brought all that Full Sail up to finish another story, but
yeah, okay, yes, finish.
It was about meeting somebody. So, my friend DeAndre, he was in my first class in Full Sail, and so another cool thing that Full Sail does is it tells you who's all in your class, and you have like a profile, and so I would go through everybody in the class and be and I would just Google them. I would just look them up to see if they already had music out and stuff like that.
Yes.
And even if they didn't, whatever their profile said, if they matched up with something that I do, sometimes we would have video game designers in our class and they were just taking the class to do one thing and then they wouldn't be in it. So I would find everybody who's doing music production. And then I would ask them hey, do you have music out? Well, I did that to DeAndre, found out he rapped. And I ended up, let's see, that was in December of 2000, I want to say 2017 or 18, I can't remember. But I met him when I came to Memphis. I ended up meeting him in Louisiana because that's where he's from, New Orleans. Drove down there and hung out with him for 2 or 3 days. And then me and my wife came back up here. And then him and his wife or his girlfriend and his kid came up here and they stayed with us. And it's that being able to just be in the same room with somebody else who makes music and
speak your language.
Yeah.
It's a gift.
It was a beautiful thing because being able to, instead of doing stuff over the internet and just messaging somebody, just actually being there with them. It's awesome, and we recorded 2 songs while he was here. We did a music video.
Cool. I saw you post a thing about the music video.
Yeah,
that's fun.
We've done a lot of work together, and he said he was gonna. So this is actually great for me, gratifying for me. He said he was going to stop making music. Like he had done music, I think he said since he was like 9 or something like that. And he said, yeah, man, I legit stopped making music until I started talking to you, and you like made me like start doing music again.
That's
and
powerful.
I just produced his whole last mixtape. He just dropped it on the 10th. And
Cool.
I produced the
I'll
whole
have to
thing
listen.
for him. And I was like, man, I'm proud of you, but we got a lot of work to do. I was like, yeah, bask in this, like enjoy it, but we're gonna hit the we got a lot of work to do. So yeah, it's awesome to just find somebody who you don't know, talk to them, and I tell people all the time, if there's somebody you admire, just hit them up on Instagram, whatever
It's
social media you do,
So true.
and just contact them because you never know what might
Never
happen.
know.
There's a chick named Doc Genfit. That's her Instagram name. But she does a lot of physical therapy type stuff. Like she teaches you how to release, like muscle release and stuff like that, and exercises. And she lives in, I think, Santa Monica. Well, me and Rachel are planning on going to Los Angeles over the summer. And I hit up Doc Genfit. She's got like, I mean, she's verified. She's got like 500,000 followers and stuff like that. And I was like, maybe she'll respond. I was going to ask her about doing a podcast. I was going to carry my Zoom recorder, carry the camcorder, and just do a podcast with her. And she responded. She's like, yeah, I should be available around then.
Cool.
So, boom, I can do a podcast with her. So I always tell people, if there's somebody out there who you would love to talk to, just give it a shot.
It's so true.
Email their manager, email them, whatever. Just give it a shot, because as I said, you got one life to live, so you don't want to go out your life thinking like, I never got to talk to that person.
Dude, seriously. And it is hard to just reach out to people sometimes. You are obviously very good at that because you're good at just asking the question.
Yeah.
You talking about your friendship with DeAndre is really cool and makes me think about how powerful and important it is to have friendships like that in your life as a creative person. But being friends with people who are friendships that are based on work and friendships that are based on like common interests that are founded in that are very neat, especially as an adult, because as children, we make friends based on who lives in our neighborhood and where we go to school and who our parents know and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Making friends as an adult is really hard. And I mean, not all the time, but like takes some effort.
Yeah.
And that's why when we talked about having a project, you know, to like work on something with someone, with Louise, she was like mutual friends with several people that I knew. I had seen her out. I knew who she was, you know. But I did not know her. And she reached out to me to record on her EP, her first like self-titled EP that she put out. And I didn't know how I felt about it at all. But then I was just like, you know, what the hell, we'll do it. That sounds great. So I went, had a really awesome experience with her. And then our friendship is like so cool to me because we became friends through playing music and through accomplishing things together and through having really cool experiences. Like we played, there's a band called Lucero that's from Memphis, and they're really big in Memphis and they have a long history. And we played at their block party at Minglewood on a massive stage way outside of our league. And at that time, for sure, because we had like really just started playing music regularly. And I remember having a moment with Louise where I was like, this is so cool. And I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for meeting you and playing music with you.
Yeah.
And like, that is something that she and I both recognize a lot now, is that the reason that our friendship works so well is because it's not based out of partying with the same people. It's not based out of because we've known each other forever. It's not a friendship of convenience. It's very much a choice, like a relational choice that we've made that's based out of like encouraging each other to do the best we can and holding each other accountable for what we're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And it's really neat and it's very pure, you know, and I think that having those kinds of friendships you're like, yeah, we're gonna hang out, we're gonna shoot the shit, we're gonna talk and chat, but like really we're here to make stuff, you know. Those are cool, and they make you feel better as a person, you know.
What is something that I guess you plan on doing with your career? Like, I know you're teaching, and do you have any like specific goals as far as like, you know, I guess career wise as a musician?
As a musician,
Yeah.
Interesting. No, I really don't.
You're just going with the flow, seeing what happens.
I mean, in 2020, as far as, I don't really consider myself to have a music career. That's the thing. I don't. I don't.
You're building stuff.
I definitely take it more seriously now than I did before. Yeah. It's not just something to do on the weekends with my friends. It's something that I think we can do a lot with. So obviously continue playing with Louise. And then hopefully we're going to tour this summer, which will be really cool. It'll be our third summer touring. And last summer touring was actual work, and we got actual money for it, and it was really cool. So hoping to just do that bigger and better. With my show that I'm having in June, I am writing and recording music, personal music that I'm, making for the first time ever. I've never recorded any kind of personal music. Thankful to have good friends who know me and trust me and understand what I want to do, and that they're willing to work with me on that. Career-wise, otherwise, I've honestly recently had a really massive shift in what I want to do in the near future, because, so the way I see it is like bartending, service industry work, that's just money, dude. That, like, I can leave that at the door, and that's a wonderful thing for me because it requires a lot of brain power to do all the other things that I do in my life.
Yeah.
And so I was really set on this like art education grad school track, and getting my master's and pursuing education at like an institutional level, writing curriculum, working with those kinds of things. And then I had this real moment where I was like, I don't want to do that. And I think I'm supposed to want to do that, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has come from paying attention to what keeps me up at night and what I'm actually into. And I don't want to commit the next 2 to 3 years of my life for getting a degree for something that I don't feel strongly that I want to do.
Yeah.
But I felt strongly that I wanted to do it, but it took some real soul searching to be like, that's not what I want to do. So I'm going to do this show in June, and I, fingers crossed, believe I have an investor for it that will help pay for all of the recording and then all of the like nitty gritty of making this like a big party, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm documenting all of it. I have my friends at 143. I've hired them to make a promo video for me. I will have work to show for how I can put an event and an experience together. So I hope to take that and then apply for grants to do it again in either January or February of 2021.
Okay.
Maybe with some people from out of Memphis, bring in some creatives and musicians from out of the city, and then make it an even bigger experience. I'm very into this idea of, what was I talking to somebody about the other day? Things that only exist in one moment. So with all of our tech stuff, we have like the ability to remember and record everything for the rest of forever, which is really cool and like a gift of living in the 21st century. But in the same way that humans are lonelier than they've ever been because everything exists in a phone, people crave meaningful social experiences. And I think it's really cool to do some work in making meaningful social experiences that can only exist in like that one time. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts for the next year as far as like creative career goes. And so I think that's the idea of being a multi-hyphenate. I kind of wrap that all up in one umbrella. Yeah. So thinking music career, I'm like, I can't tap into anything with that. But like cohesively, music, visuals,
Yeah.
experience, social, that kind of thing. Those are all very intertwined to me.
For sure. So what about your art? I know I've been looking at your Instagram. And so what do you call that? It's so like abstract is the best word I can
For sure,
use.
it is. I mean, yeah.
So how does that from brain to paper? How does that come out?
It's different for different things. I really enjoy assemblage. And so that's usually what I call it. It's like assemblage or collage work, meaning that I like seeing how things relate to each other visually and then making work about that. So really like zine culture, really like cut and paste analog methods of creating things. As far as like digital art creation, that doesn't feel good to me to make that. So that isn't something that I do. It is very abstract in the sense that you don't understand. Hold on. The work that I make has to be taken in context with other things. So that's why I always kind of try to provide if I'm posting something on my Instagram, which I really don't think too much into that, and I'm okay with that. But with putting stuff on Instagram, I try to share a lot of just like what I'm looking at, and like if I post a finished product, usually that product contains like 7 different kinds of paper or mark making or paint or image or something like that. And I really try to focus on materials that are accessible to me in a secondhand, recycled, everyday kind of way. And not necessarily in like a I love the earth kind of way, but much more so that things are more interesting to me when they have a story behind them and when they've already lived a life. So like I really love the inside of like envelopes and just the natural design that occurs in everyday life that we don't necessarily pay attention to. That could be like how I love grids and how this is split up into like a grid pattern.
Yeah.
That's cool. So if I was making a piece of work and I was trying to base it on this room, I would pull the color of your walls, and then I would pull this grid pattern, and I would pull, like the visual of the stickers, and then lay all of those things out together and look at them in pieces, and then start seeing what comes to the forefront and what goes behind it and that kind of thing.
Do you know that that's not normal? Like, does it?
I mean, I'm a weirdo, dude. Like, I know.
Some people who are very artistic like you, they don't understand that other people don't think like that. Like it's so easy and accessible. Like your brain just like pulls it and you just go. But like most really artistic people like you, they don't understand that nobody else can do what you do.
Yeah. It's like the inner monologue debate that's going on right now. Like people that have an inner monologue versus people that don't. That's wild. I hear voices in my head. Yeah. It is different. And it's been interesting. It's definitely evolved over time. I had I had a couple of really awesome professors at University of Memphis that like teachers that stand out to me. Tad Laritz-Wright and then Hamlet Dobbins. I took a couple different like drawing classes with them, like upper level drawing classes with them. And the stuff that I learned in those classes has informed, and I took a bookmaking class with Sonny Montgomery. And those 3 classes stand out in my mind as like the most influential studio art classes in my career. And I remember one time we were making something and I had a teacher talk to us about photo transfers and this idea of like, if you print something on a laser printer, it prints out an image that can then be transferred onto another piece of paper using Citresolve or these markers called Chart Pack pens. And it's very physical and you have to like rub your pencil all over it and then press it. And then like you lift it and it leaves the image. And I said something to a teacher about like completing a project and said, is that cheating? Meaning that like I suck at drawing realistically. And like, I am so okay with that. I can do it if I need to, but like, it doesn't look good. Other people are really good at doing that. I'm fine with letting them be really good at doing that. Like, I don't need to prove that to myself. Like, I have no interest in that at all.
Yeah.
Also, that's what cameras are for. But I really needed to get this like repeated image down of a figure, like a human figure. And I was like, fuck, I am not good at drawing a human figure. It's going to look bad. It's going to look childish and not in a good way. So I was like, well, if I take a picture of myself and then I copy it enough times and then I make this, then I can go in and the image that it leaves is faint enough to where I can just draw over the image and it looks like it's hand drawn. And there's still a lot of like organic like process in that, and like it doesn't feel like, you know, a coloring book necessarily. But I made it easier on myself. You know, I used the tools in my toolbox to make it easier on myself to achieve the finished product that I wanted. And I asked the teacher about that, and I was like, is that cheating? And he was like, what is cheating? Nothing is cheating.
Yeah.
And that blew my brain like way open. And I will never forget that, you know? And I don't even know where that came from. I don't have anywhere to go from that, but that made me think about it for sure. But yeah, I know that that's not normal. Yeah. But it helps me enjoy my life.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful for people to understand their talents and then just do it. Like some people that have talents and they don't express them. They don't get them out there. There's people I know who like think so crazy, and I'm just like, you should be a writer. Like you should write books because you don't.
We need people that think crazy.
Yeah. I was like, you don't think like everybody else. You could create something that people would get addicted to.
I think thinking about thinking crazy, a lot of like untapped potential is creative problem solving. And I think that is something I like to do in making visual art a lot, is to give myself a problem to solve. I'm very project oriented. Like I need to give myself a project. And like, so with assemblage, putting a lot of, with collage, I'm giving myself a lot of different elements that need to go together in some way. And that's interesting to me. And I like thinking about it. And you talked about mental stimulation and how important that is. That's what keeps us going as people, and that's what keeps us sharp and bright and looking towards the future and living in the present, is recognizing where we need to solve some problems. And, you know, with like as simple as like service industry work and bartending, every night is different, and the people that I interact with are different, and the problems that I'm going to have to solve are different. Yeah. And I can think fast on my feet in that scenario, you know? And I think that is like an untapped potential in a lot of people, is the ability to say, I'm just not a dweller. Like, I don't want to, if I'm sad, I don't want to be sad anymore. Like, I'm going to find a way to like change that, you know? So I don't like to live in the problem. I like to live in the solutions, plural, because there are always multiples. And I like to do that with art, and I like to do that with music. I like to just know, you know, what can we do to make this different, or what can we do to make this what we want it to be, you know, and how can we use the tools that we have to do that, and what new ones do we need to learn? So I don't know, I think that's important.
It is. It is. Well, it's been great having you on.
It's been cool.
You should start a podcast.
Yeah, one day.
You should start a podcast.
I want to start a podcast. I can't give myself that project yet at this moment. One day. I'm going to keep listening to them.
It's time. I mean, like, so I do video and audio. Some people just do audio. Some people, you know, they just have the video they post. But it's fun. I mean, you get to meet random people.
Yeah, I love it.
Have conversation.
Yeah. It's cool. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been great having you on.
Awesome.
Somebody else I should have on. I keep forgetting to ask people this. But
that's a great question.
I forget to ask people this, but who's somebody else I should have on?
Joshua Cannon.
Joshua Cannon. All right, who's
You
this?
should have Josh Cannon on. Josh is my brother, not my real brother, but he's my brother.
Okay.
And he's a Libra like me. He's a weirdo thinker like me. He's an empath, and he has worked in film and nonprofit and journalism. He's been playing music since he was a little baby. He's really involved in this community that a lot of us grew up in Memphis, right out here, actually, in Cordova, called Smith 7 Records, and DIY music. He's a really cool person, and he is part of the Studio 143 collective that works at Young Avenue Sound. Okay. He's doing really big things, and he's a big brain thinker, so you should have him on.
Gotcha.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody listening, and see y'all next time.
Yay!
Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to the podcast. And if you would, hit the subscribe button. The subscribe button allows you to, well, subscribe to the podcast. And if you give me a like and give me a comment, well, that would help out as well. Commenting allows you to have a conversation with me, and liking it allows me to know that you actually like it. And if you dislike it, hit the dislike button twice. That's a real help out for me. So, comment, like, subscribe, and let's keep it rolling.